All right, it is 12:01. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Todd O'Hara. I'm the President and CEO of the Montana Chamber of Commerce. And before I kick it over to Charles, I will just point out that we are recording this and so that we can put it up later for folks that may want to see what we discussed today, but weren't able to join us at 12. We will stop the recording at the end of kind of our report and then open it up if you've got questions on anything that we covered or anything in general. You're certainly encouraged to ask then, and you can do so without having to worry about it being recorded. So with that, it felt like the first 2 weeks were relatively slow, and that changed this last week, or at least in the last couple of days. Charles, do you want to kind of introduce yourself and then give a quick update on last week perhaps and what we're looking at this week?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Charles Robinson, the Government Relations Director here at the Chamber. And yeah, last week was a little slower. We didn't have a lot of high, I guess less of the high controversy bills. But that is starting to change. In fact, yesterday, there was quite an extensive hearing on Senate Bill 90, which was a proposal from Senator Carl Glimm to provide residential property owners with a tax rebate by redirecting money from the hotel and lodging tax, along with other car rental taxes and other narrow-cast sales taxes that are targeted, I think, at tourism, but certainly are paid by all Montanans. And currently, most of that revenue is help support marketing for the tourism industry and other aspects of supporting the tourism industry. And those taxes were requested by the tourism industry many years ago. And so the Chamber was one of many voices opposing Senator Glimm's bill. And in fact, there were no proponents. We have a reasonable amount of confidence that the bill will fail. It's also opposed by the administration, but we'll wait to see how the committee acts on it. And I'd like to shine a spotlight on some controversy ahead, Todd. There's two other property tax bills that essentially shift property tax burden from lower value residents onto higher value residences, but in some, the concern of the Chamber is a shift from certain business, commercial, industrial property to other employers. And so the Chamber's had some concerns about that.
Yeah, and I think generally speaking, like, I think we struggle as an organization to think that it's a good idea to shift additional burden on businesses just based upon their size. And I served on the governor's property tax task force, and throughout that entire discussion, I kept reminding that task force, that advisory council, that it's like the only way with our current structure that we've got for taxes in Montana, the way they are today, the only way that we can provide property tax for one class of property taxpayers is to increase property tax on another class. And I think I don't like that approach. You know, we've got members that are small members, and we've got members that are small in size, and we've got others that are large property taxpayers. And so we're under a real sort of constraint when it comes to our tax structure, the way that it is today. And there's a lot of attention, a lot of interest in trying to do something about property taxes. Most of it is in trying to provide relief to some while increasing the property taxes on others.
Yeah.
So I think we're, as an organization, we're just going to have to oppose those sort of things, because it's not a great place to be, to think that that's how we're going to address our property tax challenges as we go forward, by just raising property taxes on on a different class of businesses operating in Montana. I think we're still of that sort of contention that, you know, Montana needs business, and we need small business and we need big business, and putting additional burden on large business, large employers, it isn't like a great sort of approach as far as we're concerned. So that's going to draw a lot of attention here over the course of this legislative session, and we're going to see a lot of it out this next week.
Yep. And as Sheridan pointed out in the chat there, the House Bill 155 is the Democratic Caucus proposal, and then House Bill 231 is the Republican Majority Caucus proposal, and they're different, but they kind of take roughly similar approaches. Now something else in the controversy basket, but where the chamber will be a leading advocate, is renewal of the expanded Medicaid program, and that's we'll have hearings on Wednesday as well. The primary bill there that seeks to renew Medicaid expansion program is House Bill 245, Representative Ed Buttrey.
And our argument primarily on the Medicaid expansion component is that, right, this is something that's been in existence for the last 10 years in Montana. We want to maintain that sort of status quo. We think that Medicaid expansion has been critical for some Montanans that are maybe in some of the lower skill, lower wage sort of employment buckets, if you will. A lot of times it's a sort of a short-term sort of fix for them as they're transitioning or part-time. And so our argument primarily on Medicaid expansion has been that, one, from an economic development standpoint, is particularly hard on these smaller, more rural communities that have some medical services in that rural community. You take away Medicaid expansion, you take away some of those services in those rural communities, and that makes it even more difficult to draw and attract businesses into those rural communities. It makes it really hard to maintain some of the businesses you have, because if you don't have, you know, a good healthcare system in a rural community, then folks have to consider where it is they're going to reside and where it is they're going to work. So from an economic development standpoint, we think Medicaid expansion is important. On the other bucket of things is that, you know, we know that workforce is like a leading challenge for businesses across the state of Montana. They're struggling to find people to work in their business. And there's a lot of other things that are that are putting pressure on Montana businesses: high interest rates, inflation, this workforce challenge, taking away Medicaid expansion, which is particularly helpful in providing preventative medicine for some of those sort of folks, just really erodes at some of our employers that are already struggling under some things that are out of their control. And so, as Charles noted, we'll be going in part of a large contingent, but we will be among some of the leading proponents, bringing the business voice to why maintaining Medicaid expansion is important in Montana, particularly in those rural, smaller sort of communities, and for employers that are already under a lot of pressure as it relates to a healthy workforce that is able to show up to work on a regular sort of a basis.
Yep.
So that's kind of our
Yeah.
controversy sort of bucket. Some of the
Yep.
big things this week, there's a lot that's going on. And is there anything else you want to cover, Charles, real quickly on this front?
I think all of our members and all of our members are affected by the bills we just talked about. There's a workers' compensation though, and unemployment law are two areas that also affect all employers and have really been the bread and butter for the chamber over the decades to help improve those programs. And there's a House Bill 197 will have a hearing on Wednesday, sponsored by Representative Anthony DeCastro, who's friend of the chamber. He's a freshman legislator, a lawyer out of Billings, and working with us on some other bills. But 197 will revise workers' compensation laws that will streamline the process for an employee to return to work when a doctor has issued a return to full duty determination. And right now, if a doctor says you can go back to work, here's a set of restrictions. and limitations and everything. There's an administrative process and a lot of coordination back and forth for someone to get back to work. When a doctor issued you are fully cleared to return to work report, there is the same lengthy red tape administrative process back and forth, round and round, that delays the employee returning to work and can delay that by weeks or longer. And HB 197 says, if a doctor says you are fully released to return to work with 0 restrictions, that means essentially you can go back to work the next day and without lengthy back and forth and dotting the i's, crossing the t's, and additional checks and everything else. So we just think that is going to help people get back to work faster. And so we're excited by House Bill 197. There will be some opposition, but really it just makes sense that if your treating physician said you're fully healed, there's no restrictions on what you can do, go ahead and get back to work. And that's good for employees. It's good for employers as well. And then on the there's House Bill 210 from Representative Steve Fitzpatrick is to do some improvements to unemployment insurance, and will actually reduce rates for a lot of employers, and it will also build in some additional fraud prevention. So those are 2 bills we'll be in supporting in the Business and Labor Committee on Wednesday.
So that's certainly not everything that's going on this next week or happened last week. We just wanted to kind of hit the high points, and we can stop recording now.
Todd, before we stop recording, something else I think members would be interested in is on Thursday, there'll be a committee hearing on establishing Montana Mining Day. And then same committee, state administration, also another House bill to establish American Rodeo as the official sport of Montana. So, and the chamber will be weighing in with our voice of support for both of those, and to establish American Rodeo as the official state sport of Montana, brought by freshman Representative Greg Overstreet. And Overstreet is from
Valley County.
Yep. And he's a big, he enjoys the, I'm sure more than just the Derby Rodeo, but he's a big supporter there. And so some great news to just make official what everyone knows, the rodeo is the official sport.
That's right.